Welcome to Blue Line Mental Health. I'm glad you're here. If you haven't already, please take a moment to click that like button and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to hit the bell notification so you don't miss any of our new content we share. Warning: this channel may contain material that is graphic and could potentially be a trigger for some. Viewer discretion is advised. Don't say I didn't warn you. In this video, I'm honored to be joined by the Chief of Wauwatosa, James MacGILLIS, to discuss the mental health challenges law enforcement officers face amidst the increasing community stressors over the last decade. We'll explore strategies for resilience and support within the force and the community. Let's dive in.
My name is James MacGILLIS. I currently work for the City of Wauwatosa Police Department. It is a first-ring suburb of the City of Milwaukee. I've been in law enforcement I'm in my 30th year now. I started in 1995. Prior to working at Wauwatosa, I worked at the City of Milwaukee Police Department, where I retired in 2021 as a captain. Took a little break and then was sworn in as the Chief of Wauwatosa, which is also very cool because I grew up in Wauwatosa as well. It was challenging. Even after 3.5 years in my current role, I have to remind myself that we don't have 1,800 or 1,500 cops to do the things that need to happen. Again, it's scale. That was a little bit of a culture shock. I understood it, but now that I've been living it, I understand it intimately. And that also helps define my role. My role is to plan more strategically, to trust my supervisors that they're out there supporting our men and women when they're out there doing the day-to-day job. There's plenty of things to do, whether it's stopping at a business for a business check or stolen cars or retail thefts. That's the day-to-day that we do in policing. But how do we get them the necessary equipment? How do we leverage technology to make their jobs easier? I also think one of my roles as a chief or as an executive is to take those barriers and try and get them out of the way, to work towards the things that they need so that they can be successful, whether it's a technology upgrade or a piece of equipment or upgrades to their squad cars or, hey, benefits and advocacy of making sure that they're healthy, happy, and whole so they can go out and do the day-to-day job. Again, it's scale. I can't imagine how much more challenging it is for a larger agency. But in that same vein, it's equally challenging for a smaller agency because you don't have as many people. You're still expected to do the day-to-day operation, the day-to-day policing, while you're trying to get those other things strategically done over a longer period of time. Well, as a first ring community to a major urban area, the city of Milwaukee, 86% of our crime comes from the city of Milwaukee. I don't say that as a finger point, that's just the reality of it. Wauwatosa isn't a sleepy suburb. It sees plenty of policing business, from stolen cars to occasional armed robberies, the occasional shooting. Domestic violence is an issue in every community, whether they're a 600,000 resident city like Milwaukee or a 50,000 resident city like Wauwatosa. They see the whole gambit of different crimes. It's just scale and frequency. And that translates to a very rural department too. You could have a 5-person police department. It's scale and frequency. They see the same things. It's just a matter of how often. officers on a day-to-day basis deal with trauma, they deal with challenge, ugliness in the community. They're expected to go and respond and be the voice of reason, the voice of calm, stabilization, investigate crimes, protect the people that can't be protected. But one of the biggest challenges is that people also forget that behind that badge and behind that uniform, there's a human being who has a family, who has wants and desires. They want to be happy, they want to be productive, and that takes a toll on the men and women that go out there every day and protect the streets of whatever city that they're working in. It starts to pile up over time. That compounded with the media and community rhetoric and those types of stressors adds additional stress on top of a police officer. I can tell you from being rank and file and a supervisor and now as a police chief, we can't ignore the fact there's also internal stressors that happen too. Policies and rules, and that adds an additional layer of stress. The internal, they call it procedural justice, adds another layer of stress on top of cops. Well, from when I started a long time ago, we were expected to be law enforcement officers, and community's expectations of cops has transitioned to they want us to be anything and everything. And the good news is law enforcement is pushing back and defining its boundaries, where we do have a significant role as a first responder to stabilize the scene. And we're also asking the question, then what? What are we going to do with this particular situation, whether it's somebody who's in a mental health crisis or somebody who is dealing with substance use disorder, drug addiction, or how do you break the cycle of domestic violence? We get there, we stabilize, we investigate, and we're also asking the question, then what? And that's where we're having those conversations and aligning ourselves with other service providers so we know who to do the handoff to, because we're not social workers. We're police officers. That's part of our role, but we're not social workers. They're there to serve the community. Politicians are there to provide a service, and it's again scale. My mayor and I talk frequently about this. We're there to make sure the garbage gets picked up and the trees are pruned and they have safe public spaces to go to. We're there to provide that as a service in government. So we're there to serve. Cops are part of that. But the unique thing about law enforcement, about being a police officer or a sheriff's deputy, is that you touch every other piece of government. Administration can't function without being safe. Nobody's going to go to the library unless they feel safe to go check out a book or a movie. DPW workers can't go and do those services unless they feel safe. It's the one unique component of government that touches every other one. So it's incumbent upon law enforcement to have those type of relationships and make sure that we're aligned on what the city's goal is or what the municipality's goal is. We're there to serve. We're there to serve the community. That's collectively, whether you're an elected official, whether you're a city or village administrator, an alder, we're there to serve. We're part of a much bigger equation. That's my perspective on it. We've had to look at scale, capacity, and what is our real mission here? I'll use somebody who's in crisis, a mental health crisis. We go there, we stabilize the scene. We stabilize the person as best we can. Again, asking that question, then what? What are we going to do with that? Maybe if we bring a social worker with us on that call, that could be beneficial to get that person the type of long-term care that we can't provide as the tactical response, the initial connection or contact. The community has said, well, de-escalation. That is one of our primary things. We don't want to escalate. We go there to stabilize the scene. We have tools from our mouth all the way up to deadly force. We have all different tools. We provide officers training. So the community demands a lot of their police officers. It's incumbent on us to also set some boundaries as well to make sure that we're aligning with what the mission of the municipality is or what the community needs are. Furthermore, we should be asking the community, what do you want out of your police department? We also can't forget a very, very important constituency. We need to ask our own cops, what are we here to do? What are our core values? What do we stand for? When I came to Wauwatosa, that was one of the first questions I asked for. What do we stand for? What is our mission? What is our vision? What are our core values? Once we had that aligned, and those were their words and their choices, who is a Wauwatosa police officer? And you could put any municipality's name on it. Ask them that question. My job as an executive is to give them guidance on this is what our mission is and how do we align those things. Well, I think the community had some misguided expectations, misinterpretation of what it means to be a police officer or a law enforcement officer. Again, pushing back, but establishing boundaries. No, this is our piece of what the community expects of us. We're not everything to everybody. That's caused significant stress and misunderstanding, I think, in the community. I also think the media has made their own interpretations of it. This isn't an indictment on the community or the media. It's a reality. So the good news is law enforcement professionals are pushing back, putting up those boundaries so we aren't trying to be everything to everyone. That has caused significant toil and stress. I've lived through civil unrest in 2016. And I'm not talking from behind a desk, I'm talking being out there. And I've seen that stress that it had on those cops and those deputies and the community for that matter, the pain that that caused because of misguided interpretations of what they expect from police. 2020, not a good year in law enforcement. There are still remnants of those stressors in our cops. They're still trying to trust again, trust administration within their communities. They're also trying to trust community. They're trying to build rapport and trust back with the media so they have a communicative relationship. And that needle doesn't move fast. It has to be organic. It has to be built slowly. It can be quickly fractured, but a long time to rebuild that type of trust and feeling safe and feeling supported. Significant stress on cops over time. Support your cops. And if you don't understand, take the time to have a cup of coffee, to ask the question, to engage in some type of dialogue, not just from the executive or from a commander or a supervisor. Talk to the cops or the deputies that are out there every day. Again, they are people, they're human beings that care deeply for their community. When they raise their right hand and say, I do, they're putting their life on the line every day for you, for your kids, your family. Embrace that, respect that, but also support that. And support that by talking to those wonderful people who are out there doing it every day. That's how we build trust. That's how we build alignment with the community. That's how you support your cops. Take that burden of stress off of them piece by piece and support them. That would be my advice. I've been in this profession, I'm in my 30th year, and when I first started, it wasn't really talked about. Not a fun statistic to talk about, but in my tenure, um, lost 4 officers in the line of duty that I knew, that I had a relationship or knew them. Conversely, I've seen 13 officers take their own life in that same time frame. Good news is that we're asking questions, we're engaging in dialogue, we're recognizing that we need to talk about that elephant in the room. Cops are people, they have feelings, they see some very ugly things. We have to recognize that and figure out how do we support them in that venue. Openly talking about the mental health of your officers, encouraging them versus having that stigma. It's okay to go talk to someone. It's okay to see a mental health professional wherever you are in your career because of the stressors involved in it. Whether you're a police chief or a police officer or a dispatcher, you're still exposed to that same trauma, just maybe different way of being exposed to it. Even clerical staff, they have to watch some of those body-worn camera videos for like an open records request, or dispatchers who are at the other end of the radio hearing those things happening in real time and not having closure to it, or the police executive who has to go visit family members at a hospital when their loved one is dead or seriously injured. A lot of different stressors. We're talking about it. We're also figuring out what resources our cops and deputies need. Having peer support. Back when peer support probably wasn't the healthiest. It wasn't serving the needs of the people that needed that support. Well, if we develop a peer support group and a network involved with different people, volunteers, provide them some training. They're not social workers. They're there to bend an ear. Also utilizing faith. Generally, most people believe in something, some type of faith structure. The utilization of chaplaincy or faith services. Cops are more willing to talk to somebody if they know there's protections of confidentiality or even privilege. I can tell you that our legislature in Wisconsin recently passed a law recognizing that cops experience PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or post-traumatic stress. They also recognize that peer support groups should have the same privilege as a chaplain. Once they have that training, what I tell you in confidence is also privileged. That's going to get cops talking. That's going to get cops getting the help that they need. That's a far cry from where we were back in 1995, and that gives me a lot of hope and excitement that that's how we get cops to the finish line. When I say finish line, is that they have a good career, that they're healthy, happy, and whole when they leave this profession and move on to something else. I also think that as a police chief, that's my job to support that and facilitate that. It can be a very bumpy road, though. Doesn't matter if you're a 5-person department or a 5,000-person department. Again, frequency, you're going to see some horrible things out there and have some horrible experiences, but you're also going to have some great experiences. Let's figure out ways that we can help our cops cope to get to that finish line. Well, cops are people, and they deal with home life stress, work life stress, bills, divorce, things with their kids. They deal with all of those things along with going to a traumatic accident, a car crash, or seeing a community member shot, or even dying. The cops see a lot of things. They have things in their personal life, just like any other person out there, along with the added stressors of the things that they see out while they're on duty. That stuff starts to pile up. And again, they're human beings. And I don't say this as a braggart, I've seen cops struggle with alcohol. I've also seen them struggle with prescription drugs, prescription medication. I've also seen them struggle with illicit drugs too, understanding that cycle of addiction, how that can happen, of self-medication of yourself as a human being, whether through alcohol or taking prescription medication, and they end up spiraling out of control. It's recognizing that those things can happen, talking about it, interceding before those things happen. And if we know what to look for and what questions to ask, we can, again, help those law enforcement professionals make it to the finish line so they don't go down that rabbit hole in the cycle of addiction. Talking about suicide, again, looking for the signs in the workplace or through relationships or having a peer support network, being able to intercede before an officer starts to go down that rabbit hole. Because as human beings, we can go to some pretty dark places based off of the stressors that we see in our personal life and then the stressors that we see professionally. We're people that do a very unique and very rewarding, cool, interesting career, but that can take a toll. Well, the good news is I've already seen a lot of improvements. Peer support teams, peer support networks, recognizing that when an officer dies either from a medical condition or dies in the line of duty, we have to be there and be supportive. People call it the blue family. Well, you have your real family and you have your blue family. Real family comes first, but close second is the blue family. We have to recognize that there's two different groups of people there that want to be there and support. Providing better services. I've seen marked improvements on not just our onboarding, doing the psychological assessment, making sure it's the right person who does this profession, and having those conversations right when they're onboarding that destigmatizes the need for mental health support. You talk about resiliency. There's physical resiliency, being healthy physically, but then there's mental resiliency as well. Making sure that officers are aware of the services that are available, whether it's through employee assistance, whether it's through a mental health partner that a department or a municipality partners with. It's preparing them for becoming a detective, recognizing that they're going to be seeing things that they can deal with those type of stressors. I can't even imagine the stress involved being a detective dealing with internet crimes against children. The things that they get exposed to on a day-to-day basis that they have to investigate. And they may even have kids themselves. Making sure that they get mental health check-ins, or when they want to tap out and say, hey, I can't do this anymore. This is just, it's getting to be too much. Giving them the ability to not be okay with it, that they can step away from it, recognizing that they're people. I've seen a lot of improvements over my tenure in this profession, but there's still work to do. Partnerships with chaplaincy, talking to elected officials. Hey, we need monetary support to support the mental resiliency of our cops. Another thing that we haven't talked about is now you go from whatever you did before, and now you're in this profession where you're going to have maybe more money or benefits, and you're going to have a good, healthy, fun career, interesting profession. Financial planning. You're not going to do this for the rest of your life. So right from the get-go, start talking about that. Where are you investing your money? You need to have an exit strategy post-police career, making sure that those services are available. In fact, even bringing them into your department so they can meet a financial planner or a bank or a service that offers a deferred compensation program that would go along with a pension if that was part of a contract or part of what they had as a benefit. Is looking at it multifaceted. These are people that maybe need some support and guidance on how to cope, how to deal, how to prepare themselves for what a post-policing career looks like. Through the finish line. You're not going to do this your whole life. asking the questions. What do you need? Listening. One of my captains shared this phrase with me, and it rings so true: 2 ears and one mouth. We got 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. More listening versus talking. Hearing what their concerns are, what they need. At the department I work at, we have a peer support network. We had something before. We had the police officer support team partnership with the neighboring agencies, with several neighboring agencies. But we wanted to redirect or recalibrate based off of what we had heard as best practice, and there was the interest of our officers. But it has to be volunteer. You want to be part of peer support, right personality, right motivation for doing it. There's a captain on our peer support team, handles the administrative side of it, make sure that there's some balance between the day-to-day work and them as people, and then also what they do in peer support. But our team is led by a detective. She does a fabulous job. Has a lot of autonomy. Again, giving that authority to that team that if there is a critical incident, an officer-involved shooting, or something really traumatic, go do. Let me know what you need. Versus, no, this, you're not going to do that. Giving them that autonomy to lead. Again, leadership doesn't know a rank. It's giving them that authority, that autonomy to do those types of things. Obviously, it has to stay within the rules and the guidelines and the organizational mission. But if you give people the autonomy and support it, they're going to do some great things. And not great things that I might necessarily want. What our people need? There's a difference between the two. And if we look, it might actually be the same. It's hard to predict the future. You look at what hasn't been done or what has been done in a good way, or maybe not the best way, and tweak and adjust for future success. It gives me a lot of hope and optimism that we're engaging in those relationships and having that type of that conversation, whether it's a labor organization or whether it's a particular division or bureau or even organizationally, asking those questions. What do you need? How can I support that? Being honest, we may not be able to do that now, but we might be able to do that next year. But it's still on our strategic plan. We have it written down. That's something that we have as an area of focus. But also being honest as leaders, administrators. I'll give you an example. Doing mental health check-ins. Other agencies do it. I thought it was a good idea. We asked for some funding. And we did it. And we did it for about a year. We had about a year's worth of funding. We had it through a grant. And listening to the labor organization that said, you know what, boss, this is probably not what our people need. It may feel good for you, it may feel good for the common council or the community, but we have really good support systems here, whether it's through onboarding or whether that's the support bucket in the middle, or when we prepare people for a promotion. We're good. We know those services are there. I know they're using them because I see the confidential invoices, the indexed invoices that tells me they're using those services. That's my reassurance. That's the time for me to listen to my people, back off, and support them the way that they need to be supported versus what I think they need to be supported. That's, I think, a good thing. I think it also helps develop trust. But that may not be the right answer for other agencies out there. But I think it's incumbent that as a chief or a sheriff or a supervisor, ask the question, is this serving the needs of this division or bureau or even the department? And if not, let's figure out a way to get them the support that they need. But then again, sometimes you also have to say, no, we can't do that. No, it's establishing those boundaries too. Well, when I heard what you were doing, I thought it was a privilege to be able to talk about these things, especially as a police chief. And we've known each other for a very long time. Um, I'll admit my own, you make mistakes along the way, you have to own them, work through them, also be human. Um, again, informing people, giving them information that how do we best support people that are doing this job every day. People do make mistakes, we're human, but we also go out and make differences in people's lives at the ugliest point in their life. Every contact is important. Every connection is important. Relationships are important, whether they're cop to cop or cop to community member or politician to police officer. Those relationships are important. So in those relationships, it's talking about this particular issue, which is sometimes uncomfortable for people to talk about, that mental health of cops, we are not robots. We are not machines. We are people. And shedding light on that is important. It's critical for the cops' longevity and health, but also for a safer community. Support your cops. That'd be my piece to it.
With every interview, I give the law enforcement member the opportunity to talk about an event that affects them to this day. Through their stories, we witness their emotions and humanity, revealing the deep personal impact these events have had on their lives.
I remember going to officers' houses after they committed suicide. Every one of them, I remember their names. I remember the scene, but I also remember them in life and how wonderful people they were. Crime scenes, horrible, horrible things that people do to one another. Blood, mangled bodies, children, those ones involving children, ones you never forget. And how horrible those things are, what people do to children, sexual assaults, investigating those, people that you know that now you have to put on the role of police officer, those type of scenes. My gosh, those are incredibly challenging. I didn't want to make it doom and gloom and morbid, but those things stick with you. I can picture one of the many scenes, and probably one of the most gruesome and graphic, on 12th and Febrons. I can still smell it. I can smell the blood. I can smell the brain matter. I can smell the car still running. I can still hear that young man crying for his life, saying, "Please don't let me die." I still hear that. I remember my partner's face when he had to see that and how he had to cope with that. Conversely, I remember going into a young man's house who couldn't deal with the stressors of the job and ended his own life. Somebody who I called a friend. I also remember those detectives, after doing their investigation, putting on Tyvek suits to help the family do the cleanup of it because they cared that deeply. They had to put the hat on as a cop and do their job, yet they recognized how horrible it was. It was horrible for them, that they still went above and beyond to help the family cope. Stuff you never unsee, some things that you never forget. That's just my experience. Every person that wears a badge, whether it's a 5-person community or a 5,000-person police community, they see those things in some form or fashion in their life. Imagine the stress of having to take another human being's life. And in my career, by the grace of God, I never had to. But I've had to work with cops that have had to do that unthinkable thing. It lives with you the rest of your life. It goes against every faith, the tenets of any faith system, whether you're a Jew, Christian, Muslim, thou shalt not kill. Yet, cops are asked to do the unthinkable at times, and they have to live with that. Weighs on you. Conversely, there are also times when you can make that difference, like helping people through one of the worst moments of their life. And it may be the only time in their life that they have contact with a police officer or a deputy sheriff. That you can make that difference, but it comes at a cost. That's why mental health support of our law enforcement officers is so critical. I can't tell you again how much I appreciate your work in informing and telling people this part of the story.
Thank you very much.
I mean every word. You know that.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man.
It's clear that the brave men and women in law enforcement face immense challenges and traumas daily. Their service and dedication often comes at a personal cost, impacting their mental health in profound ways. It's imperative that we recognize their humanity and provide the resources they need to heal and thrive. Together, let's support our law enforcement officers by advocating for better mental health resources, ensuring they receive the care and compassion they deserve. Thank you for watching this video on our channel. If you found this content meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share to spread awareness and make a difference, one step at a time.